In a land where the lush forests meet the golden savanna, there lies a kingdom that has known nothing but peace and prosperity. The kingdom of Iyese, ruled by a wise and beloved king, Oba Ekundayo. But even in a kingdom built on harmony, shadows linger, waiting for the moment when they will come to life. One night, the village oracle, Priestess Amara, receives a chilling vision of a child born under the shadow of twin hills, a child who could either save or destroy everything the people of Iyese hold dear. A mother, desperate to protect her child, takes a dangerous step. She places him in the hands of the priestess, hoping to shield him from a prophecy that could tear their world apart. Years later, Afolabi returns to Iyese, unaware of his true heritage, but with a heart full of hope and courage. He will soon learn that the kingdom's fate and his own are inextricably linked to a prophecy he cannot escape. Join us on an epic journey of betrayal, secrets, and the battle to reshape destiny. Will Afolabi fulfill the prophecy, or will he forge a new path for Iyese? The kingdom of Iyese thrived under the golden rule of King Oba Ekundayo, a man revered for his wisdom and compassion. Nestled between dense forests and sprawling savannas, Iyese was a haven of prosperity, where laughter echoed in the streets and farmers' fields brimmed with abundance. Yet, one fateful night, the kingdom's peace was shattered when Priestess Amara awoke from a vision drenched in dread. Sitting before the sacred fire, her trembling hands clutched her divination beads as she whispered ancient incantations. The flickering flames seemed to mock her, painting eerie shadows on the walls of the shrine. A voice had spoken to her in the vision, a voice ancient and unyielding, foretelling doom. A child born under the shadows of twin hills shall bring ruin to Iyese, the voice had said. Her heart pounded as the words echoed in her ears. When morning broke, Amara stood before the king and his council. Her voice, usually steady, faltered as she recounted her vision. The court fell silent. "Are you certain?" Oba Ekundayo finally asked, his gaze heavy with worry. "The spirits do not lie, my king," Amara replied. "This child must be hidden or destroyed." King Ekundayo clenched his fists. He was a man of compassion, but he could not risk his kingdom. "No child born near Twin Hills will remain in Iyese," he decreed. "They shall be given to the priestess for safekeeping, far from our lands. This is the only way to protect Iyese." The council murmured their agreement, though unease rippled through the room. No one dared voice the fear gnawing at their hearts. What if the prophecy could not be avoided? Bisi, a young weaver with a kind heart, lived in a small hut nestled near the base of Twin Hills. She had heard the king's decree, and it filled her with dread. Her unborn child stirred within her as if sensing the growing tension. Despite her efforts to avoid the area during her pregnancy, fate had other plans. One stormy night, while returning from visiting her ailing mother in a neighboring village, Bisi felt labor pains. The road home was long and treacherous, and as the rain poured in torrents, she sought shelter beneath a large tree near Twin Hills. Under the eerie shadows of the hills, her child was born, Afolabi, a boy with bright, curious eyes and a cry that pierced the roaring storm. Bisi gazed at her son, her heart heavy with love and terror. The prophecy and the consequences of his birth weighed heavily on her. "My son," she whispered, cradling him tightly, "you deserve a life free from fear, but this kingdom will not allow it." With a deep breath and a heavy heart, Bisi wrapped Afolabi in her shawl and set out for Priestess Amara's shrine. The rain poured relentlessly, each step dragging with her dread. When she finally arrived, the priestess stood at the entrance, her expression solemn as though she had been expecting them. "You know what must be done," Amara said softly, reaching for the child in Bisi's trembling arms. "Please," Bisi pleaded, her tears mingling with the rain. "Keep him safe. He is innocent in all of this." Amara nodded, her face unreadable. "He will be taken far away, beyond Iyese's borders. He will never know his heritage, but he will live." As the rain continued to fall, Bisi collapsed to her knees, watching as the priestess carried her son into the shrine. It was the last time she would see him. Far from Iyese, a merchant named Adewale journeyed through distant lands with his wife, Yetunde. They had long prayed for a child, but had yet to be blessed. One fateful evening, as they rested near the edge of a dense forest, they heard a soft cry. Following the sound, they discovered a basket nestled among the roots of a great baobab tree. Inside lay a baby boy swaddled in fine cloth. Yetunde gasped. Who could leave a child here? Adewale looked around, finding no sign of another soul. Perhaps the gods have sent him to us, he said cautiously. We cannot leave him, Yetunde declared, her voice firm with maternal instinct. Reluctantly, Adewale agreed. They brought the child home and named him Afolabi, meaning born with wealth, for the joy he had brought into their lives. Years passed, and Afolabi grew into a strong, kind-hearted boy. He worked diligently on the farm and listened intently to the stories of travelers passing through. Yet a strange sense of longing often tugged at him, a feeling that he belonged to something greater than the quiet life he knew. One night, Afolabi dreamed of a kingdom bathed in golden light, filled with the laughter of children. At its center stood a grand palace surrounded by rolling hills. When he awoke, he whispered, "Where is this place? And why does it feel like home?" Unbeknownst to him, the blood of Iyese coursed through his veins, and destiny was already calling him back. The villagers of Iyese still whispered of the king's decree and the child of prophecy, though many years had passed since the vision. Despite the kingdom's outward peace, unease lingered, especially near Twin Hills. One evening, as Priestess Amara lit her incense, she felt a sudden shift in the air. The winds outside howled, carrying whispers she could not ignore. Seated by the fire, she cast her divination bones. The pattern they formed sent a shiver through her. "He lives," she murmured. A knock at the shrine door startled her. It was Chief Olu, an elder known for his sharp mind and loyalty to the king. He noticed her unease immediately. "What troubles you, priestess?" he asked. "The child," she replied, her voice trembling. "He is alive and growing stronger. The winds tell me he will return." Chief Olu's face darkened. "If he does, the prophecy will unfold. What are we to do?" Amara shook her head. "Fate is not so easily avoided. Perhaps," she hesitated, weighing her words carefully, "perhaps his heart will guide him differently. We must not act in haste." Chief Olu left the shrine deep in thought. If the boy truly returned, the kingdom would face its greatest test. Afolabi stood at the edge of his adoptive family's farm, staring into the horizon as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of orange and red. For weeks, his dreams had grown more vivid. Each night, he saw the same kingdom, its grand palace, vibrant markets, and people singing in joy. But always, there was a shadow lingering at the edges of the dream, whispering his name. "Afolabi," Yetunde called, breaking his trance. "The goats are wandering again. Come help me." He hurried to her side, masking the unease in his heart. Yetunde wiped her hands on her wrapper and studied him closely. "You've been restless, my son. Are these dreams troubling you?" Afolabi hesitated, then nodded. "It feels like I'm being called somewhere. A place I've never been but somehow know. Do you think it means something?" Yetunde's kind eyes clouded with worry. She had always known there was something extraordinary about Afolabi. From the moment they found him, she believed the gods had a special plan for him. But what if that plan led him away from them? "It could mean many things," she said carefully. "But no matter where life takes you, remember that you are loved." Later that night, as the household slept, Afolabi sat by the fire, gazing at the stars. He felt an invisible pull, stronger than ever. "Who am I?" he whispered to the night. "And why does my heart ache for a place I've never known?" The wind carried no answers, but deep within, he resolved to find the truth. The time had come to follow the path his dreams had laid before him. The kingdom of Iyese was alive with activity as merchants crowded the markets, hawking their wares, and children laughed while chasing each other through the streets. Unbeknownst to them, a young man with a sturdy build and a confident gait was approaching the village gates. Afolabi had arrived. His heart raced as he took in the sight of the majestic palace perched in the distance. It was just as he had dreamed. "This place," he murmured, "it feels like home." He wandered through the marketplace, his presence immediately drawing attention. His bright smile and courteous demeanor endeared him to the villagers, but it was his striking resemblance to a younger King Ekundayo that left many speechless. "Who is that?" one woman whispered to her friend. "He looks like the king himself," another replied. An elder approached Afolabi, his sharp eyes narrowing as he studied the young man. "Where do you come from, boy?" Afolabi hesitated. "From the lands beyond the forest," he answered. "I've come seeking answers about my origins." The elder's face softened. You carry yourself with honor, young one. Perhaps the gods have brought you here for a reason. Word of the mysterious stranger quickly spread. Within hours, whispers of his arrival reached the palace. King Ekundayo's advisors grew uneasy, but the villagers welcomed Afolabi warmly, sensing his kindness and sincerity. Unaware of the storm brewing behind palace walls, Afolabi marveled at the beauty of Iyese. Yet, as night fell, he couldn't shake the feeling that his arrival had set something powerful in motion. In the grand hall of Iyese's palace, Oba Ekundayo sat upon his gilded throne, surrounded by his trusted advisors. The news of the stranger had reached his ears, and though the villagers praised the young man's kindness, the king's heart was heavy with unease. "An outsider," murmured Chief Olu, his voice low yet firm. "The people say he resembles you, my king. The resemblance is too uncanny to be coincidence." Ekundayo leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "You think he could be the one from the prophecy?" "It is possible," another advisor interjected. "But if he is truly from beyond the forest, how did he find his way here? The timing is troubling." The king sighed, his gaze distant. "We cannot act rashly. If this young man means no harm, we would make an enemy of an innocent soul. Bring him to me. I must see him with my own eyes." Meanwhile, Afolabi wandered the outskirts of the village, oblivious to the growing tension in the palace. He found solace by a quiet stream, where he watched the water ripple under the setting sun. As he sat, a group of royal guards approached. "You are summoned by the king," their leader announced, his tone respectful but firm. Afolabi's heart quickened. "The king? What does he want with me?" "You will find out soon enough," the guard replied. Though apprehensive, Afolabi nodded and followed the guards. As they walked through the grand gates of the palace, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking into the heart of his destiny. The palace was even more magnificent than Afolabi had imagined. Marble floors gleamed under the golden light of chandeliers, and tapestries adorned the walls, depicting Iyese's rich history. As he entered the throne room, he felt the weight of many eyes on him. Oba Ekundayo rose from his throne, his gaze piercing. For a moment, neither he nor Afolabi spoke, the room thick with tension. The king's advisors exchanged uneasy glances, each silently weighing the young man's presence. "What is your name, young man?" the king finally asked, his deep voice echoing through the hall. "Afolabi," he replied, bowing respectfully. "I come from beyond the forest, seeking answers about my origins." The king studied him intently, his expression unreadable. "And what brought you to Iyese?" Afolabi hesitated. "Dreams, my king. Dreams of a place that felt like home. When I arrived, I realized this was the place I had been searching for." The room fell silent. Chief Olu stepped forward, his voice laced with suspicion. "You look much like the king in his youth. Have you any knowledge of your parentage?" "No," Afolabi admitted, his honesty disarming. "I was found as an infant and raised by kind strangers. My parents are unknown to me." Oba Ekundayo nodded slowly, though his unease deepened. "You speak with sincerity, but dreams can be dangerous things. Until we know more, you will remain a guest of the palace." Afolabi bowed again, though he couldn't ignore the sense of foreboding in the king's words. As Afolabi settled into his new quarters in the palace, he found himself both awestruck and unsettled. The room was lavish, with silk drapes and a bed larger than his family's entire hut back home. Yet, he couldn't shake the weight of the king's gaze from their earlier meeting. Why had the king seemed so troubled by his presence? That evening, as he stood by the window overlooking the bustling village below, a knock came at the door. When he opened it, a young woman in a servant's attire entered with a tray of food. She hesitated, her eyes scanning his face. "You are the one they speak of," she said softly, setting the tray down. "And what do they say of me?" Afolabi asked, his curiosity piqued. "That you look like the king," she replied, her voice dropping to a whisper. "It has unsettled many. Some say you are his son." Afolabi's heart raced. "His son?" he repeated, incredulous. "I know nothing of this kingdom or its king. I only came seeking answers to my dreams." The servant glanced around nervously before leaning closer. "Dreams or not, your arrival has stirred something in the palace. Be careful. Not everyone will welcome you." Before Afolabi could ask more, she hurried out, leaving him alone with his thoughts. The idea of being connected to the king was absurd, yet it explained the strange reactions he had received. As he lay down to sleep, the dreams returned, more vivid than ever. This time, the palace in his vision was ablaze, and a voice echoed, "You are the key to Iyese's fate." King Ekundayo sat alone in the council chamber, the weight of the prophecy pressing on his shoulders. Chief Olu entered quietly, taking a seat across from him. "What do you make of him, Olu?" the king asked, his voice heavy with concern. "He is honest," Olu replied, "but honesty does not negate danger. His presence could be a sign that the prophecy is unfolding." Ekundayo nodded, his mind racing. "Do you think he knows the truth of his origin?" "No," Olu said firmly. "The boy speaks as one unaware, but his ignorance does not protect us from fate." The king rose, pacing the room. "I do not wish to harm him. What if the prophecy was misinterpreted? What if this boy is meant to save us, not destroy us?" "That is a dangerous gamble," Olu warned. "The people already whisper. If they believe he is a threat, panic will spread. We must act decisively." Ekundayo sighed, staring out at the darkened hills beyond the palace. "I will not condemn him without proof. Watch him closely, Olu. If he shows any signs of fulfilling the prophecy, then we will act." As the king wrestled with his doubts, Afolabi wandered the palace halls, unaware that his every move was being scrutinized. The weight of his destiny pressed closer, like storm clouds gathering on the horizon. The palace buzzed with whispers about the mysterious young stranger. Servants, guards, and even some of the counselors murmured quietly, each story more exaggerated than the last. Afolabi's resemblance to the king as a young man became a topic too glaring to ignore. In the council chambers, Chief Olu addressed the gathered elders. "This boy's presence is too coincidental. He arrives unannounced, resembling our king, and claims to be guided by dreams. Such things are rarely innocent. But he has done no harm," Elder Areti countered, her voice measured. "The villagers adore him. He has brought no weapon, no threat. We must tread carefully." Chief Olu's lips pressed into a thin line. "Treading carefully is how kingdoms fall, Areti. The prophecy looms over us like a shadow, and I fear it grows darker with each passing day." Oblivious to the heated debates, Afolabi found himself drawn to the palace library. The walls were lined with ancient scrolls and texts chronicling Iyese's history. A kind, elderly librarian named Baba Ifa greeted him warmly. "You are curious," Baba Ifa remarked as Afolabi scanned the shelves. "Not many take an interest in these dusty old stories." "I'm looking for answers," Afolabi admitted. "About this kingdom, its people, and maybe myself." Baba Ifa's gaze lingered on him, thoughtful and knowing. "Perhaps the answers you seek are not in books, but in the winds of fate. Still, knowledge is a good foundation for any journey." As Afolabi thanked the old man and began reading, he stumbled upon a scroll detailing the prophecy of Twin Hills. Though vague, the words struck a chord deep within him. The child born under Twin Hills will carry both the light of hope and the shadow of destruction. His hands trembled. Was he the child of this prophecy? Priestess Amara sat alone in her shrine, the scent of burning herbs thick in the air. The spirits had been restless, their whispers louder than ever. She knew it was only a matter of time before the truth surfaced. Her solitude was interrupted by a visitor. Chief Olu entered, his expression grim. "Amara, we need to speak." She gestured for him to sit, her voice calm but weary. "You seek answers about the boy." "Yes," Olu said bluntly. "He is here, Amara, and his resemblance to the king is undeniable. The people are already whispering. How much longer can this charade continue?" Amara closed her eyes, the weight of her actions pressing heavily on her soul. "The boy, Afolabi, is the child of the prophecy," she admitted. Olu's breath hitched. "Then we are doomed." "No," Amara said firmly. "The prophecy speaks of duality, both light and shadow. His heart is pure, Olu. I have watched him grow from afar, and he has only ever shown kindness. Perhaps he is meant to save Iyese, not destroy it." "Or perhaps his kindness blinds you," Olu retorted. "If the kingdom learns the truth, they will demand action. We cannot gamble with Iyese's future." Amara's voice softened, her eyes pleading. "If we strike against him unjustly, we may fulfill the prophecy ourselves. Let his actions guide our judgment, not our fears." Olu rose, his face a mask of conflict. "I will honor your wisdom, Amara, but know this, if he gives us reason to doubt, I will not hesitate." As he left, Amara whispered a silent prayer to the gods, hoping they would guide Afolabi's path and Iyese's fate. The days in the palace brought Afolabi mixed emotions. Though the beauty of Iyese mesmerized him, the cold stares of some of the elders and the whispers among the servants unsettled him. He longed to prove he was no threat, but how could he, when even he didn't understand his place in this story? One afternoon, the king announced a challenge for the young warriors of Iyese, a test of strength, agility, and intellect. It was a tradition meant to showcase the kingdom's bravest, but this year, it served another purpose, to observe the stranger. When the royal messenger approached Afolabi, he hesitated. "Do I have a choice?" The messenger gave a slight bow. "Participation is voluntary, but it would honor the king if you joined." Afolabi nodded, sensing this was more than a simple invitation. As he prepared for the trials, villagers buzzed with excitement, eager to see the stranger's skills. The first trial tested strength. Competitors carried heavy boulders across a field, while the crowd cheered. Afolabi's upbringing on a farm gave him an edge. His determination carried him past others, earning murmurs of approval. The second trial demanded agility. Participants had to navigate a series of obstacles, climbing walls, leaping over pits, and balancing on narrow beams. Afolabi moved with surprising grace, his focus unshakable. The final trial required intellect. A riddle was posed by the king himself. What is the one thing that grows when shared and diminishes when hoarded? Afolabi paused, his gaze thoughtful. Then he answered confidently, "Love." The crowd erupted in cheers, and even the skeptical elders exchanged uneasy glances. As Afolabi stood before the king to receive his token of victory, Oba Ekundayo's face betrayed no emotion. But in his heart, the king knew this boy was no ordinary visitor. Afolabi's triumph in the trials only deepened the divide in the palace. To the villagers, he was a hero, strong, clever, and kind. To the elders, he was a threat. And to Oba Ekundayo, he was a puzzle that refused to be solved. In the shadows of the council chamber, Chief Olu met with a small group of elders. "The boy's victories have emboldened the people," Olu said, his tone sharp. "If this continues, they will rally behind him. Do we wait until he usurps the throne?" Elder Aredi frowned. "He has done nothing but bring hope to the kingdom. Are we so blinded by fear that we would condemn an innocent man?" "Innocent or not," another elder interjected, "the prophecy cannot be ignored. If he is the child of twin hills, we are playing with fire." Olu's voice dropped to a whisper. "Then let us ensure the fire is extinguished before it consumes us all." Unaware of the brewing conspiracy, Afolabi walked through the village, enjoying the warmth of the people's smiles. He stopped at a blacksmith's forge, admiring a finely crafted sword. "You've won the hearts of the people," the blacksmith remarked. "But beware, when you shine too brightly, you cast shadows." Afolabi frowned. "What do you mean?" The blacksmith lowered his voice. "Not everyone is cheering for you. Keep your wits about you, young man." That night, as Afolabi lay in his chambers, he couldn't shake the blacksmith's warning. For the first time since arriving in Iyese, fear crept into his heart. He was no longer sure if he was a guest, a hero, or a pawn in a game far greater than himself. Oba Ekundayo summoned Afolabi to the royal gardens, a place where the king often sought clarity among the serene beauty of nature. The sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a golden glow over the carefully tended flowers and ancient trees. Afolabi approached the king, bowing deeply. "You called for me, your majesty?" Ekundayo nodded, gesturing for him to sit on a stone bench. "The trials proved your strength, intelligence, and courage. The people speak highly of you." Afolabi smiled, though he could sense the tension in the king's voice. "I am grateful for their kindness, my king. I only wish to repay their hospitality." The king's expression darkened. "Hospitality is not without its cost. The people's love is a powerful thing, Afolabi, but it is also dangerous. They see in you a savior. To some, that makes you a blessing, to others a threat." Afolabi hesitated, his mind racing. "I do not seek power, your majesty. I only seek to understand who I am." Ekundayo studied him, his gaze piercing. "Then you must tread carefully. This kingdom is like a fragile vase. One wrong move and it could shatter. I will protect my people at all costs, even if that means protecting them from you." The words stung, but Afolabi saw the sincerity in the king's eyes. He nodded solemnly. "I understand, my king. I will do my best to prove I mean no harm." As the king turned and walked away, Afolabi felt a chill in the evening air. The warning was clear. Any misstep could seal his fate. In the dimly lit chambers of Chief Olu's quarters, a clandestine meeting was underway. The elders who shared Olu's fears sat in a circle, their faces etched with concern. "He grows too popular," Olu began, his voice a low growl. "The villagers adore him. Even the king hesitates to act. If we wait any longer, he will have more influence than we can contain." Elder Ade nodded. "The people believe he is destined for greatness, but if he fulfills the prophecy, Iyese will fall. Can we risk that?" "What do you propose?" another elder asked. Olu leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "We must act before it's too late. If we can discredit him or remove him quietly, the prophecy will end with him." "But what if we are wrong?" Elder Iredi interjected, her tone sharp. "What if he truly is here to bring salvation? Would you have us destroy an innocent man to soothe our fears?" Olu's eyes narrowed. "This is not about fear, Ireti. It is about survival. If we do nothing, we gamble with the lives of every man, woman, and child in this kingdom." The room fell silent, the weight of the decision pressing down on them all. Finally, one elder spoke. "If we are to act, we must do so carefully. The people will not forgive us if they suspect treachery." Olu nodded. "Then let us proceed with caution, but make no mistake. Afolabi's presence is a risk we cannot ignore." As the elders dispersed into the night, Olu stared out at the moonlit palace. He was convinced the boy's downfall was the only path to Iyese's salvation. The palace grew eerily quiet after dusk, but the stillness held secrets. Afolabi, restless and uneasy, wandered the gardens under the silver glow of the moon. The scent of blooming flowers mingled with the cool night air, but even this peaceful setting did little to calm his racing thoughts. As he walked, he felt the prickle of being watched. Pausing near a stone fountain, he scanned the darkness. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice firm but edged with caution. For a moment there was silence, but then a shadow moved. A hooded figure stepped out from behind the trees. Afolabi tensed, his hand instinctively reaching for the small dagger he had begun carrying. "Do not be alarmed," the figure whispered. The voice was soft but urgent. "I mean no harm." "Then step into the light," Afolabi demanded, his grip on the dagger tightening. The figure hesitated before revealing themselves. It was the servant girl who had delivered his food on his first night. Her face was pale, her eyes darting nervously. "What are you doing here?" Afolabi asked. "I came to warn you," she said, glancing over her shoulder. "The elders are plotting against you. They believe you are the child of the prophecy." Afolabi's heart sank. "I have done nothing to harm this kingdom." "That doesn't matter," she replied, her voice trembling. "They fear you, and fear makes men dangerous. Please, you must be careful. Trust no one." Before Afolabi could ask more, she vanished into the shadows, leaving him alone once again. The weight of her warning pressed heavily on him. He had come to Iyese seeking answers, but now it seemed his very presence was a threat. King Ekundayo sat in his private chambers, staring at his reflection in a polished bronze mirror. The lines on his face seemed deeper than ever, his once vivid eyes clouded with worry. He poured himself a goblet of palm wine, but left it untouched. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Enter," he said, his voice heavy. Chief Olu stepped in, bowing deeply. "Your Majesty." "Olu," the king said, motioning for him to sit. "You come with more warnings, I presume." "Not warnings, my king," Olu replied. "Only truths. The boy grows more popular with each passing day, the villagers see him as a hero, and the council grows uneasy. If we do not act soon—" The king raised a hand, silencing him. "You believe I have not noticed? That I am blind to the whispers in my own halls?" He sighed deeply. "But what would you have me do? Kill a boy who has done nothing wrong simply because of a prophecy?" "Prophecies are not mere words, Your Majesty," Olu pressed. "They are warnings. You said yourself you would protect Iyese at all costs. Do not let hesitation be our downfall." Ekundayo's jaw tightened. "And what if the prophecy was wrong? What if by striking at him, we bring about the destruction we seek to avoid?" Olu fell silent, his expression grim. "The choice is yours, my king, but choices have consequences." As Olu left, the king turned back to the mirror. In his reflection, he saw not just a ruler, but a man caught between duty and doubt. Could he afford to gamble on Afolabi's innocence, or would doing so seal Iyese's fate? Days passed, and Afolabi found solace in unexpected companionship. Among the villagers, a young warrior named Dara took a liking to him. Dara was fiercely loyal to the kingdom, but admired Afolabi's humility and strength. "You carry yourself differently," Dara said one evening as they practiced sparring by the river. "Not like the palace folk. There's something raw, something real about you." Afolabi smiled faintly. "Perhaps it's because I'm not one of them. My roots are simpler." Dara chuckled. "Yet you've earned their respect in a way many could only dream of. But be warned, respect can turn to envy, and envy can turn to betrayal." Afolabi paused, lowering his wooden sword. "Do you think I'm in danger?" Dara's expression grew serious. "I think you're walking a path no one else understands. Whatever you do, tread carefully. Not everyone smiling at you wishes you well." The words lingered with Afolabi long after Dara left. Though the warrior's friendship warmed him, it also reminded him of the precarious balance he was trying to maintain in a kingdom that seemed both to embrace and reject him. Priestess Amara knelt before the sacred flames in her shrine, her body trembling as the spirits' voices grew louder. The prophecy she had tried to contain for years was spiraling out of control, and the presence of Afolabi and Iyese only magnified the unrest. Suddenly, the flames roared higher and a vision engulfed her mind. She saw Iyese consumed by chaos, buildings ablaze, villagers fleeing, and Afolabi standing at the center of it all, his face a mask of anguish. Amara gasped, clutching her chest. The spirit's voices became deafening. "He is both savior and destroyer. Choose wisely, or all shall perish." The next morning, she summoned Ekundayo to the shrine. The king arrived with a mixture of reverence and trepidation. "What have the spirits revealed?" Amara's face was pale, her voice trembling. "The prophecy is clearer now. The boy will bring ruin to Iyese, but he may also be its salvation. The path he takes will depend on the choices we make." The king's fists clenched. "How can I protect my kingdom if I do not know which path he will choose?" "You cannot control destiny," Amara said softly, "but you can guide it. Treat him with wisdom, not fear." Ekundayo left the shrine, his mind heavy with uncertainty. The weight of leadership had never felt so suffocating, and for the first time he doubted his ability to navigate the storm brewing around him. The council elders met again, this time under the guise of a routine gathering. Olu, ever the instigator, spoke first. "The prophecy tightens its grip on this kingdom. Every moment we delay is a risk we cannot afford." Elder Iredi, now a voice of caution, countered, "We do not even know if the boy truly poses a threat. Are we to condemn him for simply existing?" Olu's gaze hardened. "The oracle's silence speaks volumes. If he were not the child of the prophecy, Amara would have denied it outright." Another elder, swayed by Olu's argument, nodded. "The villagers' loyalty to him grows daily. If it comes to choosing between him and the king, who will they follow?" The room fell silent as the question hung in the air. Finally, Olu spoke, his voice cold and decisive. "We must act. If the king will not take measures, then we must protect Iyese ourselves." As the meeting ended, the elders dispersed, their minds filled with doubt and resolve. In the shadows of the corridor, a servant overheard the conversation and slipped away unnoticed. Later that night, Afolabi found a note slipped under his door. "Beware the council. Danger looms closer than you think." Afolabi woke early the next morning, the cryptic note still clutched in his hand. His heart raced, the weight of the words heavy on his chest. The council. Danger looms closer than you think. Who among them wanted to harm him, and why? As he pondered the note's meaning, Dara appeared at his door, his usual bright smile absent. "Afolabi, there's something you need to know." Afolabi frowned. "What is it, Dara?" Dara looked around nervously before stepping inside. He closed the door behind him, lowering his voice. "I didn't want to be the one to tell you, but I think you need to hear it from me before someone else does." "What are you talking about?" Afolabi asked, his pulse quickening. "The council. They've been discussing you. They fear you," Dara admitted. "Not because of who you are, but because of who they think you could become." Afolabi took a step back. "You're saying they plan to harm me?" Dara hesitated, guilt in his eyes. "I didn't want to be part of it, but I've been forced to choose. They want to act, Afolabi. They think that if you remain in the kingdom, the prophecy will come true." Afolabi's hands clenched into fists. "You've been part of this? You knew?" "I didn't know what else to do," Dara pleaded. "I was trying to protect you, but I was caught between loyalty to you and my loyalty to the kingdom. They've threatened me, Afolabi. They say if I warn you, they'll kill my family. Afolabi felt a wave of betrayal wash over him. He had trusted Dara. Yet in that moment, Afolabi knew that he couldn't let fear control his destiny. You've chosen your side, Dara. Now I must choose mine. The tension in the kingdom had reached a breaking point. Afolabi's popularity with the people continued to grow, and with it, the suspicion of the elders. The whispers around the palace were becoming louder, and even the servants seemed to glance at him with unease. Afolabi paced through the royal gardens, his mind spinning with questions. How could he uncover the full truth about the prophecy? How could he navigate the storm threatening to tear the kingdom apart? His thoughts were interrupted by a quiet voice. "You're troubled, young prince." Afolabi turned sharply to see Priestess Amara standing at the entrance to the gardens. She looked tired, her face drawn with worry. "Amara," he said, his voice filled with frustration. "What is happening? What do they want from me? Am I truly the one in the prophecy?" The priestess approached, her expression grave. "You have the heart of a king, Afolabi, but the truth is, the prophecy is a double-edged sword. The people's fear of it has taken on a life of its own. Whether you are the one to fulfill it or not, they will treat you as such. Fear gives birth to hatred, and hatred can turn a savior into a destroyer." Afolabi's hands trembled. "But how can I prove I mean no harm? How can I stop a future I don't even understand?" Amara's eyes softened. "You cannot stop destiny, but you can choose how to walk the path laid before you." She paused. "I believe you are not the child who will destroy Iyese, but I fear the elders will make that choice for you." Afolabi felt the weight of her words. His fate and Iyese's seemed to hinge on a single, inevitable choice. As the sun dipped beneath the horizon, casting long shadows over the palace, the final confrontation seemed inevitable. Afolabi knew he could no longer hide from the truth, no longer live in the shadow of the prophecy. It was time to confront the king. He entered the royal chambers with purpose, his heart pounding. The air in the room felt thick, heavy with the tension of the past weeks. Ekundayo stood by the window, gazing out over the kingdom. "Your Majesty," Afolabi began, his voice firm, "it is time for us to speak plainly." The king turned slowly, his eyes tired but resolute. "I knew this day would come, Afolabi." "Then you know why I am here," Afolabi said. "The prophecy, the whispers, the fear, what is the truth? Am I truly the child who will destroy Iyese?" Ekundayo's gaze softened, his expression unreadable. "You are not the one who will destroy this kingdom, Afolabi, but the fear of the prophecy has led us all to this point. The elders, they are blinded by their own fears, and I, as their king, have let them dictate my choices." Afolabi stepped forward, his voice steady. "Then it is time to make a choice of your own, my king. We cannot live in fear any longer. If I am to remain in Iyese, I must have your trust, not as a shadow of a prophecy, but as a man with his own destiny." The king's eyes glistened, and for the first time, Afolabi saw the vulnerability in his eyes. "I've been afraid, Afolabi, afraid that by trusting you, I would betray the kingdom. And by betraying me, you would betray your people," Afolabi replied, his voice low but firm. "I will not be the one to destroy Iyese, but if you choose to let fear rule, then we all may fall." Ekundayo's shoulders slumped as the weight of the decision pressed down on him. Finally, he nodded, a solemn understanding passing between them. "Then let us face the future together." The following days saw Afolabi and King Ekundayo working side by side, rebuilding the trust between them. The people of Iyese began to see the unity between the two leaders, and the fear of the prophecy slowly began to dissolve. But not all was as it seemed. In the dark corners of the kingdom, the elders still plotted, their resolve unbroken. Chief Olu met in secret with his closest allies, eyes hard with determination. "The king is weak," he hissed. "He has chosen the boy over the kingdom, and we cannot allow this to continue." One of the other elders, his face shadowed, spoke softly. "What do we do now?" Olu's eyes gleamed. "We take matters into our own hands. If the king will not act, we will force his hand. The prophecy must be fulfilled." As the conspirators discussed their plans in hushed voices, the kingdom unknowingly teetered on the edge of another dangerous precipice. The elders' betrayal was only beginning. Afolabi's journey had only just begun, and Iyese's future, though brighter than before, remained uncertain. The shadow of the prophecy loomed large, and even the bravest hearts could not escape its grip. As the days wore on, Afolabi's influence in the kingdom of Iyese continued to grow. The people, who had once whispered about him in fear, now spoke of him with reverence. His bravery during the drought had solidified his position as a hero in their eyes. Yet even as the kingdom seemed to prosper under his leadership, the dark clouds of conspiracy gathered in the background. One evening, as Afolabi walked through the bustling market square, he overheard a conversation that chilled him to his core. "Have you heard? The elders are planning something drastic," a man whispered to his companion, his voice trembling. "Everyone knows Afolabi is the child of the prophecy," the other man replied, his voice low but filled with certainty. "It's only a matter of time before the king does what must be done." Afolabi stopped in his tracks, the weight of their words sinking in. Despite his efforts to prove himself, the seeds of fear had already taken root in the hearts of the elders, and perhaps in the hearts of the people as well. They believed the prophecy, and no matter how kind or noble he was, that belief could not be undone. Later that night, Afolabi confided in Dara, who had become more of a brother to him than a friend. "The elders, they're plotting against me, Dara. It's no longer just whispers. They are planning something." Dara's face grew pale. "Afolabi, you must be careful. If they believe you are the child of the prophecy, there's no telling what lengths they'll go to." Afolabi clenched his fists. "I can't run forever. I need to confront the truth, whatever that truth may be." The resolve in his voice was unmistakable. Afolabi knew that the time had come to uncover the secrets of his past, no matter the cost. The following morning, Afolabi sought out Priestess Amara once more. He needed answers that no one else could provide. He found her in the shrine, sitting in quiet meditation, her face calm but burdened with a sorrow Afolabi could not ignore. "Amara," Afolabi began, his voice filled with urgency. "I need to know the truth. Everything, the prophecy, my past. What are the spirits telling you?" The priestess opened her eyes slowly, her gaze piercing. "Afolabi, I have kept much from you. The prophecy is not as simple as it seems. The child born under the shadow of Twin Hills was meant to bring both destruction and renewal. It was never about your actions. It was about the choices of those who feared you." Afolabi's breath caught in his throat. "So I am the child of the prophecy." Amara shook her head. "Not entirely. The prophecy spoke of two possible futures, one of destruction, the other of salvation. It was never certain which path you would walk. And that uncertainty has driven the kingdom to the edge of madness." Afolabi's heart raced as the truth began to sink in. "So it is true. Everything they've said about me is real. I am the one who could destroy this kingdom." "No," Amara said firmly, her voice filled with conviction. "You have the power to save Iyese, but you must choose it, and you must make that choice now. The elders have made their plans. They will not wait much longer." Afolabi stood in stunned silence, the weight of the prophecy bearing down on him. For the first time, he realized that his life had never been his own. He was a pawn in a game that had been played long before his birth. Afolabi spent the rest of the day in contemplation, his thoughts a whirlwind of fear, doubt, and determination. The weight of the prophecy pressed heavily on his chest, and he knew the time had come for him to make a choice. He had to decide not just for himself, but for the kingdom he had come to love. As night fell, Afolabi stood before King Ekundayo in the royal chambers. The king's face was drawn with worry, his once strong presence diminished by the constant strain of the prophecy's shadow. "Your Majesty," Afolabi said, his voice steady, "I know the elders are planning something. They believe I am the one who will destroy this kingdom, but I will not let fear rule my fate. I came here to save Iyese, not to destroy it." Ekundayo's gaze softened, but his voice was heavy. "You cannot understand the weight of the crown, Afolabi. The prophecy is not just about you. It is about the future of the kingdom and the trust of the people. If you are the one the prophecy foretold, then we are all doomed." "I refuse to be bound by what others believe," Afolabi replied, his voice rising with conviction. "I am not a pawn in their game. I am the one who will lead Iyese into a future free from fear." Ekundayo's eyes flickered with uncertainty. "Then what do you propose?" "I will confront the elders. I will make them see that their fear is the true enemy. If I am the child of the prophecy, then let it be known. But I will not stand by while Iyese is torn apart by fear and lies." The king sighed deeply, his face clouded with regret. "I cannot stop you, Afolabi, but I fear the consequences of your actions." Afolabi nodded, his decision final. "Then let the consequences come. I will face them, whatever they may be." The next day, Afolabi gathered the villagers and the palace guards in the central square. Word had spread quickly that he was about to confront the elders, and the tension in the air was palpable. The villagers, once fearful of him, now looked to him with hope. Afolabi stood tall before them, his heart pounding in his chest. "The prophecy that haunts this kingdom has made us all prisoners. The elders believe I am the child who will destroy Iyese, but I am not that child. I am the one who will save it." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the crowd. Chief Olu stepped forward, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. "You speak of salvation, but you forget one thing. You are the prophecy. We cannot afford to let you rule." Afolabi's voice rang out, steady and powerful. "You have been led by fear for too long. If you want destruction, then continue to follow the path of fear. But if you want peace, if you want Iyese to thrive, then stand with me now. This kingdom will rise above its fears." The elders' faces were a mixture of anger and fear. Chief Olu raised his hand to strike, but before he could act, the king appeared at Afolabi's side. "No more," Ekundayo said, his voice strong. "The prophecy will no longer control us. Let us move forward, together." The elders, silenced by the king's words, slowly backed down. The crowd erupted in cheers, their faith in Afolabi restored. Yet, even as victory seemed certain, Afolabi knew that the future of Iyese was still fragile. The storm had not passed, it was only beginning. Months passed, and Afolabi became a true leader of Iyese, beloved by the people and respected by the kingdom's elders. Together, he and King Ekundayo worked to rebuild Iyese, forging a path of unity and prosperity. The prophecy, once feared as an inevitable curse, was slowly forgotten as the kingdom flourished. But Afolabi never forgot the lessons learned along the way. The truth of the prophecy was no longer a burden, but a reminder that the future was shaped by the choices they made, not by the whispers of fate. In the end, Afolabi had not destroyed Iyese. He had saved it, proving that even in the face of destiny, courage and wisdom could change the course of the future. And as the sun set over the golden savanna, Afolabi looked toward the horizon, knowing that the true legacy of Iyese had yet to be written. The sun rose over the kingdom of Iyese, casting a golden light over the land that had once been shadowed by fear and uncertainty. The echoes of the prophecy were now faint whispers in the wind, lost in the triumph of unity and the resilience of a people who had chosen to believe in each other, not in the ominous words of fate. Afolabi stood at the edge of the palace balcony, gazing out over the kingdom. The people were thriving, their laughter and songs filling the air as the harvest season approached. The crops were plentiful, the rivers flowed freely, and the markets bustled with life. The kingdom of Iyese, once on the brink of destruction, now stood as a beacon of hope for all who heard its story. King Ekundayo approached from behind, his presence a quiet reassurance. "You have done what I could not, Afolabi. You have brought peace to this kingdom." Afolabi turned to face the king, a smile softening his features. "No, your majesty. We did this together. Your wisdom, my strength, we both played our parts in rewriting Iyese's future." Ekundayo placed a hand on Afolabi's shoulder, his expression full of pride. "Your heart has always been pure, Afolabi. That is why I knew, despite the prophecy, that you were the one to lead this kingdom." For a moment, Afolabi's thoughts drifted back to the journey he had undertaken, the doubts, the betrayals, the fears that had nearly torn him apart. He had faced a destiny that seemed inevitable, yet through his choices, he had forged a new path. One not defined by ancient words, but by his actions, his heart, and his resolve. "I was born under the shadow of twin hills, yes," Afolabi said softly, "but I choose to live in the light of our future, a future where we are not bound by fate, but free to shape our own story." Ekundayo nodded. "And that is why you are the true heir of Iyese, not because of prophecy, but because of who you are." As the two men stood in silence, watching the kingdom below, they knew the future was no longer uncertain. The kingdom of Iyese had endured, not because it had avoided the prophecy, but because it had embraced the courage to change its fate. In the years that followed, Afolabi became a legend in his own right. He ruled with wisdom and compassion, leading Iyese into an era of prosperity. Under his reign, the kingdom flourished, not just in wealth but in spirit. The people, once divided by fear, now stood united, their hearts full of hope for the future. Afolabi and King Ekundayo remained close allies, guiding the kingdom together. As the king grew older, Afolabi took on more responsibilities, but the bond between them never wavered. When the time came for Ekundayo to pass on the crown, he did so not with sorrow, but with pride, knowing that Iyese would continue to thrive under Afolabi's leadership. Priestess Amara, who had stood by Afolabi since the beginning, remained a trusted advisor. Her wisdom guided him, as she had once guided the kingdom. She watched with pride as Afolabi created a legacy that would last for generations. "I always knew you were meant for greatness, Afolabi," she told him one evening as they stood in the royal garden, watching the stars. "Not because of the prophecy, but because of the strength in your heart." Afolabi smiled, his heart full. We all have our destinies to choose, and it is not the stars that determine our path, but the choices we make along the way. As the years passed, the story of Afolabi and the prophecy of Twin Hills became a tale told to the children of Iyese, a story not of doom but of redemption, of a man who defied fate and chose to shape the future with courage and love. And so, the kingdom of Iyese thrived, its legacy written not in the ink of fear, but in the actions of those who believed in a brighter tomorrow. The people sang songs of hope, and the sun continued to rise over a kingdom that had learned to live not in the shadow of prophecy, but in the light of their own strength. Many years after Afolabi's reign had ended, the kingdom of Iyese still flourished. The tales of his leadership were passed down through generations, and the prophecy of Twin Hills was but a whisper in the wind, a reminder of how far the kingdom had come. Scholars and historians, studying the ancient texts, discovered something profound. The prophecy had never been a curse, but a lesson. It had not foretold a single child's downfall, but rather the challenge faced by all who would lead. The real prophecy, they realized, was not about destruction, but about the power of choice, the weight of leadership, and the courage to change one's fate. In the end, Afolabi's true legacy was not as the fulfillment of an ancient prophecy, but as the one who had rewritten the story of Iyese, and in doing so, had shown that the future was never set in stone, but always open to those willing to shape it. And so, the kingdom of Iyese continued to thrive, not because it had avoided the prophecy, but because it had embraced the freedom to create its own destiny. As the kingdom of Iyese flourished under the wise rule of Afolabi, the people lived in harmony, their hearts unburdened by the shadows of old prophecies. Afolabi's reign became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even the most daunting of destinies could be rewritten through courage, unity, and the power of choice. The tale of Afolabi, the boy born under the ominous shadow of Twin Hills, echoed through generations, not as a story of doom, but as one of redemption and triumph over fear. It was a story passed down to children, inspiring them to believe that their futures were not determined by fate, but by the decisions they made and the paths they chose to walk. And as the sun set over the golden savanna, casting its final rays upon the land, the legacy of Iyese remained etched in time, not as a kingdom haunted by prophecy, but as one that had embraced the freedom to shape its own destiny, forever bound by the strength of its people and the choices of its leaders. The kingdom of Iyese had not just survived, it had truly thrived, and as long as its story was told, it would continue to live on in the hearts of those who dared to change the course of fate. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed this incredible journey through the kingdom of Iyese. If you love the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more amazing tales. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to bring you more content that will inspire and entertain. Stay tuned for the next adventure, and remember, your story is yours to create.